The East India Company still stands as the British Empire's greatest colony and eastern arm, despite widespread protests, dissent, and mutiny. In an act of what the Home Office describes simply as barbarism, the angry citizens of the company's Indian holdings rose up across the country, demanding independence and the restoration of the Mughal Empire. Despite calls for support going widely unanswered, the director of the company and the colonial governor managed to organize the troops stationed in the country for a brutal quelling of the uprising with the help of its loyal princes. The mutiny only lasted for 5 months, but during this time showed the empire that even its most prominent holdings were not safe. An internal investigation revealed that the uprising was preventable, and the company board had been complacent, but no major reforms were made. There was talk in London of disbanding the company entirely and enforcing home rule directly, but given the frosty relations with France that could turn into outright war at any moment, this was dismissed. If Britain had been more stable, this conversation likely would have gained traction. With the company intact, it has pledged to its supporters a reinforcement of stability and the pursuance of more fair economic policy enfranchisement and phasing in local businessmen and aristocrats, though it is little more than words. On the horizon, the creation of the Pan-Asian Alliance spells danger for Britain in the East. China and Japan are quickly rising economically, and the mutual assistance bloc has caused a surprising tilt in the region. Only time will tell if the company survives, or if India will reclaim her power. This is a role-playing game of Victoria 3. I hope you enjoy. So just to kind of clarify what we're doing with this, I wanted to basically roleplay a game where we would stay like a loyal, just super autonomous colony of Britain who would basically only be involved in their economic markets and pay very mild taxes and give them access to tariff-free imports from the Indian economy. The East India Company is going to basically stay in power. This is going to be a timeline where the Raj never happened per se, and the company just kind of stayed in power. We put down the rebellion very effectively when that did happen, so there's not really the motivations that happened in our own history for the Raj to be created. So what I basically want to roleplay out in this game is like the first like corporate state, which is that India is going to be run for the foreseeable future, perhaps even the majority of the game, by a corporation. We're going to be the very open kind. We're very elitist. So class-wise, we're very classist, but we're not going to be like a very bigoted one. So we will integrate a lot of like Indian merchants and Indian wealthy individuals into the East India Company. So it's just going to be a corporate state essentially is what we're going to do. We're going to be focused entirely on our economy, on expansion of good exports, and just basically ensuring that the rich industrial class has a ridiculous amount of capital. We are going to incorporate all these other minor states into our country as well. We're just going to have to wait for it. As long as we continue our development and continue to cooperate with the British economically, stay in their market, expand the amount of goods that we produce and obviously export from the Indian economy, we're going to be very strong. Realistically, we're only going to go for super elitist stuff that makes sense. We do have an abolitionist industrialist party though, and we still haven't got rid of the caste system, so going for this would actually probably be the next step. Qing are going to war for the Long Prebong. Interesting. Again, we are still more or less a subject of Britain. We can do a fair degree of private like deals and cooperation, but there's not a lot of people that the corporation of East India would be very interested in conducting talks with, given that we are in the British economy. We're meeting most of what we currently need. To outside observers, the industrials may appear firmly committed to the idea of banning slavery, but behind the facade of unity, discord has long festered. Now a clique of dissenters have finally had enough and have officially broken with their fellow members over this issue of reform. We'll pay to get them back on board. This is really going to hurt the chances of banning slavery, though. Our own leader is President Wilbraham Spencer Churchill. He's a reckless and experienced political operator. However, in the roleplay, the leaders really only have a measure of power. It's the industrialists who have almost all the money in the country and basically get whatever they want. So really, the power behind the company right now is Terence Lane, who is an abolitionist, persistent, experienced diplomat. So the ruling class is not popular. At some point, we may get a popular uprising against the East India Company, and we might go to like, you know, like a free India. That may realistically happen. We'll need to build up some more railways there. Do we have an excess of engines? We're making most of them in Britain, I think. Yeah, we do. We have a pretty big navy, which is historically accurate, actually. The East India Company's army and navy was some of the biggest, if not the biggest, on the planet for, I think, well over 100 years, wasn't it? It was quite a while. Let's work on coal plants again. There's a huge need for coal in the British Empire, and we are going to go ahead and provide some. We'll build 20 of those. Potentially restricting child labor, but then again, we're only educating the wealthy, so that wouldn't really apply much for them. Right of assembly, we wouldn't care about. Interventionism we would certainly want, but it's just not going to happen. No, I mean, we kind of have all the laws that our current ruling party would want. There's not much that we would want to change to here. We already have a dedicated police force, so... I mean, realistically, what we would probably want to do is get the bureaucratic power to fund more institutions. I think that's what we'll work on. So once we finish with a bunch of coal mines, we're going to work on building up the bureaucratic power of the East India Company government. And then we're going to seek to fund higher quality education for rich people and more of a police presence, especially given we did have a revolt pretty recently, so that would make sense. We can fund any agriculture and plantations and infrastructure with the investment pool due to agrarianism. So when we get this a little bit bigger, we're going to fund a bunch more tea plantations and opium plantations, which will all be paid for by the wealthy industrialist investors of the company, not us. Belgium has a higher GDP than Germany. How the fuck is it that big? Jesus Christ, they actually do. 1/4 of our country is currently, or just about, are radicals, so we're not the most popular. It's mainly because the armed forces and the church, everyone really doesn't like our government right now. Not really sure what we can do about that, besides simply just putting more law enforcement on the streets, which we are going to try and do. So roleplay-wise, the East India Company has managed to secure itself after a giant stock crash that happened several years before. We are now in the process of cracking down on the dissent that is national in a corporate state, one with dramatically different access to both healthcare, education, and just general quality of life. We have gotten rid of some of the mistreatment of the undesirables, but the caste system is still being utilized as an enforcement tactic of the company's power in India. And next, we are going to be getting some of the rogue princes back under our control. Those who cooperate with us, we are happy to integrate into the company and the industrial class, but any who oppose us will be invaded and have their assets completely taken by the East India Company government. But we do need to dramatically expand our bureaucratic capacities in Calcutta to expand the police force. So that's the main focus of the industrialists and the company government right now. Japan's attempting to invade in this region. They have the backing of the Qing and Korea. That's a real major problem. We need to send an ambassador to the Qing about this. This is actually a big problem. Greetings, this is an ambassador from the East India Company.
Hello. Who do you want to talk to?
I suppose the Qing, Japan as well. We are looking with growing concern at the situation developing in Indonesia, as we find it to, frankly, be a real danger to the shipping lanes of the company and an unprovoked active aggression from the Qing in Japan. We wish to know what exactly is the reasoning for this.
Sorry, there will still continue to be open trading channels no matter what between our two countries. I can promise you that. It would be a deficit to both of us if the trade were to cease.
Indeed, but the issue here is, I'll be honest, we care little for the people there, but having the Qing and, or really specifically Japan, expand so aggressively into Indonesia is a security concern. We're not a military installation, however, we do have a large fleet and navy that we do use to defend the area, and we do find this balance of power change in Asia to be very concerning.
Are we specifically talking about the Indo-Chinese Peninsula or Indonesia?
Both as a whole.
They're separate regions.
I don't think that the Japanese shogunate is expanding into territory that, frankly, it has no valid reason beyond conquest. Given that the company itself has done plenty, we're not sitting on any high ground, but objectively, this is a danger to us.
We are trying to secure our trading lanes as well, since there was no leniency on the lands of Tessarim as well. You
are attempting to cut out a very large portion of Indonesia, and we don't see any valid reason for the Japanese shogunate to be doing that.
All I am doing is taking over Johor, which will allow us to have better trade routes with one another, seeing as we'll share a land border.
You are taking over Johor, Borneo, and the entire region of Borneo.
That's not in Indochina. That is very separate.
I said Indonesia earlier.
Oh, okay. Well, Borneo is just to secure those lands, as they've been in constant revolution for many years now. Johor, it's so that we can have...
I assume then you intend to release them as an independent government after then?
It depends on what the situation is.
I'll be entirely frank here. I'm here to gauge, as a representative of the company, if we do need to build up our military and potentially speak with the British government about having a more heavy presence in Asia here. I personally don't like to be involved with the British government, but if we see lots of Japanese aggression here, we're going to unfortunately have to go that route.
Well, lucky for you, this will be the last of the aggression for a long while.
And again, I do hope that you are planning on releasing Borneo, as that is a red line for the company.
That's a red line?
It is a red line.
Why are you involved in Indonesia? Or
why the same question should be thrown at you. Why are you involved in Indonesia?
To help my vassal state of Sulu, and also to help secure the Asian people from colonizers.
Good. Then again, I think we have no issue of you just dealing with the uprising and releasing them as an independent country, correct?
I still see no reason for the East Indies to be involved in this matter.
We're not going to intervene in this war, but we will militarize if needed and start preparing for further action in the region, which we would prefer not to.
If you want to make that choice, that is yours. I do not want to intervene in sovereign nations. I
take it to mean that you will then go ahead and annex Borneo.
Most likely, yes.
Thank you for your time. Okay. That's an issue. So historically, the East India Company had large amounts of like trading deals in both Indonesia, Indochina, and China itself. This is a historical region that was within our sphere of influence. We also have a declared interest in there. The company is not militarized right now, but this is becoming a bigger and bigger of an issue. And Japanese expansion, I mean, that player is acting like that's not a big deal. That's a big fucking deal. Japan expanding into Indonesia would be a massive foreign policy shift. It'd be a pretty big deal. So yeah, we're gonna go talk to the British and see how we want to deal with this. Greetings. I am an ambassador from the East India Company.
Greetings.
Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking with James Dundas, the military leader of or the newest strongman in London.
It is good to speak with you. I'm here over a very concerning issue which has arisen. Indonesia. As you know, the company does not have a major military presence at the moment, and we continue to focus on economic matters, of course, to help the British economy and for the investors of the company. We are having a considerable issue right now with, are you aware of the Japanese aggression into Indonesia that has just occurred?
No, I was dealing with a lot of stuff.
I understand there's a lot going on in Europe, but it is my duty to inform you of the situation. The Japanese, alongside their friends the Qing, have engaged in a war to subjugate large regions of Indochina and conquer all of Borneo, which the company sees as a huge economic and strategical threat to both the company and the British Empire as a whole. I'm sure you would agree.
I agree. I would say if they're really like in the military offensive, I believe. I would say the British Empire will speak with them if they do not back down.
We would like permission to put pressure on them to embargo the Chinese and Japanese markets.
That's my vision. We agree with this.
Very well. We're going to be building up our navy quite dramatically in the East India Company. Seeing as that historically, the East India Company had a very large navy. They did maintain a pretty good sized army, but it was their navy that really made them powerful militarily. So we're going to go along with the historical scope of things. We also need to produce more silk. Cutting off the Qing and their markets have dramatically hurt our silk markets. So we're going to go ahead and swoop in and provide an alternative to Chinese silk. Here they are in a single market. All right, how can we've embargoed them? Is there any other things we can do to hamper their market? What is making them a lot of money? Opium. We're gonna produce so much opium that basically we're gonna make theirs less valuable. I don't think there's much we can do beyond that in terms of economic warfare besides already embargoing them. I thought the Qing would be more economically reliant upon British markets, but it appears that's just not the case. Their economy is still going up very quickly. Our economy is finally really growing quickly. Getting access to all of the silk production within the British Empire and offsetting that from China has been huge.